Congressman Mike Quigley is a Democrat representing Illinois' 5th District, back from D.C. Congressman, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Glad to be home. Good to see you.
So leadership in this vote for Santos, leadership came out, Republican leadership tried to save him, the Speaker, Republican leaders. It wasn't enough to do it. Just curious if there's a message there about the control that the leadership has over their caucus, or is it more that the votes weren't whipped so everybody felt they could do what they wanted?
Well, look, obviously every vote counts when you have such tight margins. Right now, without Santos, they can only afford to lose 3 votes on the Republican side. So that tells me leadership was worried about that. But look, in the end, he himself is a joke and gratefully gone from Congress at this point in time. I think the real problem there is, as we know too well in Chicago, Paul, you know that the real cost of corruption isn't so much anything financial. That's important. But I think the real cost of corruption is the loss of the public's trust. And that loss of trust leads to apathy. I think it also creates opportunities for extremism. So it does real damage. It's tough enough to make these decisions. We need the American public to know that we're doing it for all the right reasons. And George Santos tells the American people it's just the opposite.
Well, and certainly here the votes included significant number, over 100 Republicans in that, so it was bipartisan. Let's turn to the Middle East and some of the concerns going on there and other places. Obviously, the ceasefire is over in the Middle East. Israel already stepped up their bombing in Gaza. Moving forward, how do you balance Israel's desire to respond to the October 7th massacre while still trying to protect innocent Palestinians who are, they're getting killed in the crossfire?
Sure. In 2009, I walked through the streets of Gaza after a smaller but an intense conflict at the time. And I could see firsthand what Hamas's tactics were to use civilians as shields to hide in a densely populated area. That makes this very difficult. Obviously, as you were talking about, Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. And if you were just to say the day after this massacre, well, we should have a ceasefire, it only allows Hamas to sneak back into their areas and prepare to do this again. At the same time, we need to get humanitarian aid in there, and Israel must exert every effort to conduct this assault on Hamas to protect as many civilians as possible, and again, to ensure that humanitarian aid gets there.
President Biden wanting to send $14 billion over to help. What's interesting is certainly Republicans want strings put on that money, but some of your Democratic colleagues also putting some conditions. What is your view? I know in the past it's gone with no strings, support for Israel. What is your view on any acceptable restrictions on the money for Israel?
Look, I have real problems with the administration going into this conflict in Israel. I strongly support a 2-state solution. And I'm hoping that if there's anything that comes out of this conflict that's positive, that we move toward that end and a long-term resolution of this conflict. But at this point in time, it'd be very hard to detail exactly what those strings would be. Appreciate that's part of a larger calculus. We've got to pass this bill that'll have money for Ukraine. It'll have money for Taiwan. It'll have money for Israel, and probably a southern border policy. That calculus gets tough. Look, I want to see real changes in the Israeli policy in their region, but I give them the absolute right to defend themselves and to go after Hamas to prevent this from happening again.
And I do want to touch on Ukraine just for a moment. You're co-chair of the Ukrainian caucus in Congress. You've pushed for additional assistance there. Attention is clearly diverted to Israel and other issues. Can you give us a very quick update? Are you satisfied where things are today?
I think if you look back a year and a half ago when this started, the intelligence was this war would be over in 4 or 5 days, and the Russians would simply roll over Ukraine. That didn't happen. For that, we should be happy and understand that reasonable expectations are in mind. After the landing at Normandy, the Allies didn't sweep across France through the hedgerows, cross the Rhine and directly into Berlin. It took a long time. It was complicated, and here the Ukrainians don't have control of the air, and it becomes very difficult. I think they're still making progress. I think there's real hope out there. But to give Putin hope at this point in time by cutting off aid to Ukraine would be disastrous.
The migrant issues here in the city, obviously the city seems to be doing what it can to find housing where it can. Any update on the possibility of federal aid coming to the city, given the fact that it looks like the mayor, governor, everybody's looking to the feds for assistance?
Well, they're right to do so, and the federal government simply hasn't done enough. And we are working with the administration to change that as quickly as possible, recognizing just what those needs are. So I encourage Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson to do the same thing, and I hope to work with them to accomplish this. This is a difficult task, but helping these migrants says a lot about who we are as a country.
So you do have a few weeks more till the end of the year, but January 19th, you face the next deadline when it comes to budget and a possible shutdown. Do you expect a deal there, or now with Republicans having less control and needing, only having 3 votes to spare, what do you expect to happen on that?
Look, at some point in time, Republican leadership's going to understand and remember that in June we had a deal, and this is a divided government, and you have to compromise. If you're going to let the farthest right of their party hijack the process, we will shut down, or we will work on a continuing resolution for a whole year, which isn't good for the military, and it's not good for any sector of our country or our economy. So at this point in time, all I can do is encourage them to do the right thing, offer a willingness to compromise and work together as we did before. But if this speaker thinks that he's not going to draw the ire of his far right when he seeks to compromise with us, he simply hasn't looked at the last year.
Congressman, less than a half a minute, but obviously it looks like the House will move forward potentially with an impeachment proceeding regarding President Biden. Is it strategy for 2024? Is there anything there to your knowledge?
Look, I think the Republicans I know who operate in the real world recognize this as folly. There's nothing there. I think the American public recognizes that, and I think it's just another attempt by the Republican leadership to appeal to their far right.
Do you expect anything to get done in these next few weeks that you have before the end of the year?
I'm forever hopeful, but, I'm a Cub fan, so I think you have to take that into consideration.
All right. Congressman Mike Quigley, thank you so much for your insights. Having just come back from Washington, we appreciate it. We'll stay in touch with you. Have a great holiday season coming forward.